Paul Nugent. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Great having you on. It's been a little while since I've done a show. It seems like I haven't been able to do as many shows in recent times because I've gone through a lot of hell in the past month and a half, having to quit my job that I've been working for 15 years as a clerk in my dear sweet mama's retirement. Well, she's retired now, but dear sweet mother's ophthalmology office. I wasn't able to continue working there because they were mandating everybody to get the shot because they gave in to Dictator Biden's mandate saying if you don't get all the employees in your medical business the shot, then you don't get Medicare money anymore, and then it's bye-bye business. So they decided to sucker up to that, and as a result, I had no choice but to quit because I refused to get the shot by the deadline date, which would have been 6 days from now. But now I'm working at Whole Foods, which is a dream come true in a sense because that's where I get all my food, and I get a 20% discount, 30% this week actually, and I'm taking full advantage of it. It seems like everybody there is extremely friendly, working in a market environment. It's actually pretty good. Seems to be working pretty well for me. But I am doing the show as well on the side, and it's great. I'm great to tell everybody that I can start monetizing again. They're letting me monetize with ads on YouTube, so I don't have to get into that whole spiel about please listen to my interviews on Cost.tv and not YouTube because I can monetize with Cost.tv's blockchain technology. That's not really necessary anymore. I'll still upload all these interviews to YouTube and Cost.tv in the event that YouTube censors me. It's a miracle they haven't. Although I've heard recently from some people like Brad Johnson and Michael Sala that YouTube and Facebook, the white hats, are starting to take over those organizations to a greater extent now, so we shouldn't expect as much censorship, which is a good thing, of course. But enough about me and my little life story here. I've babbled enough on that. Paul Nugent, I don't actually remember, to be honest with you, where I heard about you. Maybe it was some internet video where they mentioned one of your articles and critiqued it. But you are from the Aetherius Society, a symbol for that. It's a registered trademark, apparently. That society has as a symbol that Hindu symbol that looks like a backward, like a three, and like a cursive S with a boat above it, and the pyramid next to that, maybe triangle next to that. Maybe you can explain why those symbols were chosen for that when you get into what the Aetherius Society is. But before you get into what that is, why don't you tell us who you are, what you experienced, your life story. I don't have Alex Jones-itis, as I like to say. I don't interrupt my guests, so I will put myself on mute and let you take as long as you need. But like I said, try to keep it to 5 minutes because we got some nice subjects here, nice juicy subjects to talk about from your blog on the Aetherius Society, all the posts you've written that I'll use as a nice guide. So let me shut up and put myself on mute. You got the floor. Who are you and what is the Aetherius Society, please?
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Andrew, and very nice to have this time to speak with you. So then, quickly, myself, I'm 63 years of age. I'm not so sure why I'm saying that straight up, but anyway, back in my 20s, I was living and working in London. To all intents and purposes, I had a good career ahead of me. I had a mortgage on what we call a flat in England. You call them apartments over here, with my brother. Normal friends, relationships, life was good, you could say. But at the same time, I just sort of felt it deep intuitively that there was something more. It had to be more than just sort of having a job and probably getting married and settling down, having kids and all that stuff. It just seemed that no, life's got to be more, have more to it than just that. And I did not know what to do. It was, you could say, it was a crisis, bit of a crisis. And for whatever reason, and I'm not sure what that reason was, but I started reading a Bible that I had had since childhood. And I didn't read the Old Testament, but I did read the the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it just answered sort of those deeper, inner, more soulful questions that had erupted within myself as to what our real purpose is here on earth, what it really is all about. And a consequence of reading those Gospels, I started attending a church. I felt I should go to a church. The only one I knew of to speak of in London at the time was Westminster Abbey. So I started going there. And again, it was very nurturing. It was helpful for me. I later, well, once I used to go on a Sunday evening, and instead I got there early, and so I walked down a well-known street in London called Whitehall, which is where Downing Street are and government offices and stuff, into another famous part of London called Trafalgar Square, where there is a very old, wonderful, very well-known church. It's actually referred to as the Parish Church of England, called St. Martin's in the Fields. And I attended their service that evening and became quite involved in that church. At the same time, I was working in the wine trade in London. That was my career. And I had a wonderful boss who was a very, very sort of spiritual man in his own way. And he had a very interesting secretary who came along. My boss was studying Eastern philosophy at a school in London. And his secretary was a member of the Aetherius Society. And the three of us, say we were in the wine trade. Nick was the wine buyer. I was his assistant. And we lived above, or the office was above a delicatessen. So quite regularly, we'd find ourselves sort of getting stuff from the delicatessen, and we had some wine that needed to be sampled. So we'd have these very long, wonderful lunches, the three of us. And there I was with my sort of very Christian, newfound Christianity, Nick with his Eastern philosophy, and Patricia, who, as I say, was the Aetherius Society, and been to another wonderful place in Britain called Findhorn in the north of Scotland, where brings in divas. And anyway, I guess sort of long story short, I started studying Eastern philosophy at the school in London, which resonated with me with concepts such as karma and reincarnation, not in traditional Orthodox Christianity, although you could make a case that they were taken out. And Patricia, I went to Findhorn in Scotland, loved it, and also the Aetherius Society, which was founded by Western Master of Yoga, Dr. George King, in the 50s, mid-50s, who we believe in the Aetherius Society was a contactee of extraterrestrials, which was something I'd never thought about, but I attended because, no reason to discount Patricia. She was a very sensible, wise, interesting, intelligent person. And I guess the big changing point, and to sort of wrap this basic introduction up, but I still was very much holding on to my Christianity, and yet the Aetherius Society claimed that Dr. King, on 12 consecutive Sundays in 1958, which was the year I was born, to reverse engineer why I'm 63, but on 12 consecutive Sundays in 1958, he had been contacted, he channeled, if you like, we believe Jesus, who we think or believe comes from Venus, and aka the bright and morning star. And there I was, as I say, with my very sort of newfound Christianity, or not quite so newfound at this point, listening to Jesus. And, obviously the initial automatic thing would be to reject it, or to be at least highly skeptical. I would say I was somewhat skeptical, but there was a profundity, and there was a truth, and there was a purity in it, and a wisdom in it, and even a vision and a solution in it, that I just found that it wasn't something that I could just completely ignore. It was something to be more deeply investigated. And that's what I did. And I've been a member of the Aetherius Society. That was 1986, or at least when I became a member. I came here to the American headquarters in 1990, where the founder was Dr. George King, his primary residence here in Hollywood, California. And I've been here ever since. And in a broad nutshell, besides that, I'm very happily married to a lovely Japanese wife called Yuriko. And, for the most part, life is good. So there you go, Andrew, whatever you want to pick and choose from that lot.
Well, it's nice to hear that you can say life is good after all the hell the world's been going through.
Well, that's an aside, Andrew, and I appreciate and sympathize your earlier comments on that. Yes.
Yes. Now, just a quick backstory, if there's not too much trouble you can give on choosing the symbols to use for the Aetherius Society. That symbol, some debate whether or not it should be called a Hindu symbol. The one with it looks like a 3 and then a cursive S, and above the cursive S is what looks like a boat with a dot in the middle. Yeah, I actually have that symbol on a necklace that I hang from my computer chair, because I meditate on my computer chair often whenever I'm listening to meditations that require headphones in the computer, and I figure that having that symbol on my chair dangling from a necklace will actually help my meditations and enhance them. In addition to that, you got the triangle right next to that, and you got to understand, putting a triangle in your society symbolism is going to bring a field day for the conspiracy theorists who assert that this is an Illuminati organization. But of course, it's kind of a silly way of looking at it. If that were true, then my mother's ophthalmology organization that I recently had to stop working at would be widely viewed to be an Illuminati organization because of all the single eye images that we use in our that they use in their work and such. What exactly is it about that symbol that the Aetherius Society likes? Not just the triangle, but also that whether the Hindu or not Hindu symbol with the 3 and the cursive S and the boat above it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It is the logo of the Aetherius Society, and you're right that they all except for the triangle. I think they are Hindu. Certainly come out of Eastern iconography, if that's the word, symbology. And it is the oldest, I believe, it is the oldest known symbol for God, and I think obviously taken from the Sanskrit. The triangle is traditionally the symbol of wisdom. And I mentioned Dr. George King, founder of the Aetherius Society and master of yoga. And on which note, I mean, many sort of people, practice yoga, so-called, in this modern day. But this was coming out of the Second World War, in which he was a conscientious objector, practicing yoga for up to 8 hours a day over a period of 10 years. So he was able to go into the goal of yoga, which is a state of consciousness or meditation known as samadhi. And it was in this state of samadhi, an unbroken period of samadhi lasting several days, that this symbol, as it were, sort of manifested, showed itself to himself. This was actually pre the official founding of the Aetherius Society. He was talking probably about 1955, I think it might have been, or certainly otherwise 54. And he chose it to be the logo, as I say, of the Aetherius Society. And very simply, what it means, the way it would be understood, is God manifesting itself through wisdom. And so that's what that is about.
Yes, and again, I'm glad I use that symbol in my meditation assistance. All right, so we've got a bunch of things to discuss here, and I guess the first one, this article here, what comes first, faith or spiritual experience? One of those chicken and egg kind of things, but from a different subject matter. So one could argue one can't have spiritual experience without having faith first, because you experience everything that you are. You don't experience what you want, you experience what you are, the vibrations you put out into the universe, and you wouldn't have a spiritual experience unless you had the faith to have it first. But this universe does have free will interference, not just the system of domination and control, which is gladly losing more and more power every day now, but they still have the ability to interfere with your free will, and of course, so do the good guys, your guardian angels and spirit guides, and the creator, whatever the creator is according to your perspective. The point is, they have the ability to cause something to happen to you which an experience to give you a spiritual experience, which would in turn cause you to have faith. So in that sense, because of their free will interference upon you to help you, I guess they wouldn't do it unless they wanted to help you. You're getting you've got some faith because you had a spiritual experience where your guardian angels and spirit guides interfered with your free will for your benefit. So one could say, well, the question, it depends on your point of view, but maybe you have a way of saying, no, 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 it's not a point of view issue. There is a definitive answer when it comes to this. Why don't you touch on why you wrote this article and what exactly does come first?
Well, yeah, and you can see I begin by saying one of life's oldest riddles is what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It is a conundrum. And I think, I mean, I can't exactly remember why I wrote the article at the time, but, sort of readdress it now. I think that, you see, coming back to my earlier story, there I was in London in my 20s, sort of happily and going about my little life. But something kicked in. And I think what it was what kicked in, if you like, was my soul. That's the word I would use for it. Sort of communicating through my, I would say, intuition or my conscience. So it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was then and now, is that it was past life experience. It was something that I knew to be true from, when I say true, I mean true in that sort of very soul felt, meaningful, profound, genuinely true with a capital T way. That caused me to, as I say, investigate spirituality. And I think that it's, and yet having embarked on that, then I did have some very remarkable, I would say, I mean, they were remarkable to myself anyway, remarkable spiritual experiences that only served to deepen that sense of faith. And so I think that, I think it somewhat remains a conundrum, and whether faith comes first or the spiritual experience comes first. But I think that both are actually much more deeply rooted in our own psyche at that soul level, arising out of, I would say, previous lives, which obviously is something we very much embrace together with Hinduism. I mean, we're not necessarily embracing Hinduism, with aspects of it for sure, but I mean, as Hindus embrace the laws of karma and reincarnation, so do we in the Aetherius Society.
Thank you. Before I get on to possibly critiquing another article, well, I'll definitely be doing it. I'm looking at the clock and it says 1, 2, 3. How synchronistically appropriate. There is a significance behind numerological things like that, seeing ascending numbers and all that, but that's another story. Well, maybe you could give your take on that at some point down the line. But anyhow, I want to ask you about the George King. You said he would do yoga for 8 hours in a row during the day. Now, a lot of people would hear that and say, well, that's he's got great endurance, if you will, to do yoga and keep doing something like that, and sitting or standing on a mat for that long to be able to get great enlightenment and all. But all the people that criticize the New Age movement for the things that they do have said things like, you're not going to change the world by sitting in a creek and meditating for 8 hours nonstop. It's you got to be a little more active because you're suppressing your divine masculine by doing that kind of thing. And well, yoga maybe one could debate a little more active than meditating because you're moving around and switching positions and improving flexibility and your spiritual enlightenment and all. But 8 hours a day, do you think maybe that's kind of overdoing it? And you think maybe this guy was, as much as he seems like a great guy to look up to and admire and all that, would you like not encourage people to to go to that extreme, because that's kind of a little too extreme. That's kind of like borderline New Age movement, kind of obsessive, which is gonna suppress your divine masculine. And I want to point out Mark Passio, Church of Satan member turned whistleblower, did a fascinating 7-hour presentation that I did manage to watch in its entirety, called "The New Age Movement: Deception and the Suppression of the Divine Masculine," explaining how it was created to suppress the divine masculine. And I can't help but wonder if someone who does yoga 8 hours in a row is suppressing their divine masculine, because, well, get a life, some would say, if they saw that that's what they do. They sleep for 8 hours, they do yoga for 8 hours, and come on, you're kind of killing your potential time there. So, because there's 24 hours in a day, you know what I mean. So, do you think that maybe that was a little too obsessive of him, or would you actually say, no, 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 if you want to do yoga for 8 hours, go right ahead. It's definitely, there's nothing unhealthy about it. It really can help you. Screw the people who don't like who tried to say it's all new agey.
Right. Well, there's a lot there, Andrew. No, I don't think he was overdoing it. And I think that, we all have 24 hours in a day. And I think, coming back to what you were saying at the beginning about personal freedom, etc., I think it's up to each individual how they choose to spend those 24 hours, as long as, of course, it's legal, or when I say moral, perhaps as much as legal. No, you see, you said tremendous endurance. We can sort of liken this to, what comes first, faith or spiritual experience. What comes first, endurance or determination? And I think that, it wasn't just sort of idly sitting there, oh yeah, I can do this for 8 hours. There was an inner determination, and you could relate that back to his own intuitive inner sense. Dr. King, unlike almost everybody, was, for him, it was vital, more important than anything, to gain enlightenment in this life. For most of us, it's why we do have reincarnation, because we're slow, we get sidetracked, and we get involved in this and waste time there and all kinds of stuff. And that's why we've got to come back and have another go. For him, it was determination to attain it, and in order to attain it, it required this extreme intensity and discipline. And just as a side note to that, I do yogic practice normally for between 30 and 60 minutes a day. There was a period when I was doing 2 hours of yogic practice a day, and one thing I will say about that is that doing 2 hours of yogic practice is more than double as sort of intense as doing 1 hour. In other words, it sort of is an exponential curve. And I can only imagine what it must be like to do 8 hours when one is actually really going exceptionally deep into the mind belt, or whatever it is that one gets into with that, and what comes out of that intensity in terms of realization. And I think it probably serves to only drive oneself to do it again, because the experience is priceless. But it's not just or for the sake of one's own personal pleasure and benefit, if you like. The purpose of it, of this kind of intense practice, is to, rather than you like said, sitting in a creek for 8 hours or whatever, its purpose is to come out of it in that sense of action, to be of service in one way or another to the whole of humanity. Humanity back in the 50s, which was the nuclear age, had gone nuts, testing atom bombs left, right, and center, later hydrogen bombs. The world was in crisis then. The world is in crisis now. The world needs to be, in my opinion, obviously, but we need a profound change. There's a wonderful bumper sticker which says, if you're not appalled, you haven't been paying attention. Our world is in crisis, and I would say it's not just an environmental crisis or an economic crisis or a political crisis or a health crisis. No, it's a spiritual crisis. The world is in spiritual crisis. We need some kind of profound spiritual shift, awakening. And to which note, I would say that is happening anyway. That is taking place as part of the evolution of mankind being speeded up, which you might see as another blog post I have there. So no, was it a waste of time? Absolutely not. Was it for his own personal benefit, pleasure? No, absolutely not. It was to awaken himself so that he could, as he became, it wasn't his intention at the time, it became a medium for beings from other worlds, giving profound wisdom. We are coming into a greater awareness of the immensity of what we are a part of in a cosmic and spiritual sense. I hope that answers your question, Andrew.
Yes, and there's another question I have regarding yoga that perhaps you could help me answer because, well, I'm kind of worried, concerned about my yoga instructor because she had, I had been doing yoga for a little while from 2017 until the time the pandemic lockdown started in March of 2020. And once a week, yoga instructor would, an hour and 15 minutes, we'd have a session. But when the lockdowns happened, we couldn't go to the place anymore for a little while. But now that things are reopening, she's letting us come in, but she's apparently been suckered by the pandemic propaganda. She will not let anybody come in to do yoga unless they're vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, she insists they wear a mask. And she herself has already gotten 2 vaccine shots in the booster. Can't help but worry about those ticking time bombs that she's put in her body with those toxic needles. And but I have to wonder if she does yoga as much as she does, is there a good chance that she and anyone else who has gotten the shot will actually be able to heal themselves by doing yoga so much? Can yoga be a good way to heal the body if you've gotten too many toxic needles? Do I have to worry about her, or do you think the benefits of yoga can counter the damage that she could have potentially done putting those ticking time bomb needles into her body?
Yeah, interesting question. You know, speaking just entirely personally for myself, but I'm basically with you on this subject of this particular vaccine. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I went to Africa a few years ago and got the vaccines that I needed to get. I have not personally taken these RMA vaccines because and without getting sort of caught up in conspiracy theories and whatever else about the whole thing, but I think that the best way that one can sort of get through COVID is, number one, obviously not have comorbidities and that kind of thing, but having a strong, healthy immune system. And having a strong, healthy immune system, and you're getting me on something by which I am no means an expert at all. I'm an absolute rank amateur on this, but it's just my own personal take on the whole thing. So yeah, eating well, taking regular exercise, and not getting stressed out. And I think yoga, in one of its side effects, is to make us more calm. To not, to prevent us from getting stressed out, so to speak. So I would say that, your yoga teacher or any other disciplined yogic practitioner, by yogic discipline and practice, is helping their state of mind, for sure, to be more balanced, more calm, and that I would say is obviously beneficial to the whole immune system.
Yes, yoga can do great things for people. One of the best examples I can think of, Ricky Williams, former NFL running back who quit the NFL, allegedly said he wanted to tour the world, but everybody knew that was a cover to conceal the fact that he wanted to quit so he could smoke more cannabis because he had failed a couple of drug tests when the NFL players all get tested for recreational drugs in the springtime, and had to sit out at least one season because of that. And but he took up yoga, and he claims he was able to quit cannabis, and he was able to make a return to the NFL. after his retirement, he wanted to come back, and he owed it all to yoga, helping making him want to come back to play football and being able to quit cannabis. And there are some football players, I think particularly wide receivers. Chris Carter, former Philadelphia Eagle, Minnesota Viking player, was known for doing yoga to enhance his skills. So it has the ability to do things and help you in ways that you wouldn't necessarily know and wouldn't necessarily expect people who do yoga to do yoga, because it can help them. So, okay, with that being said, we're about halfway through the interview. This is the point where I'm going to make the rest of this interview pay-per-view. Folks, please do consider paying me on Patreon, subscribing to be able to listen to the last 50% of this interview and the other ones that I will be doing. Originally, I was only doing 35-40% of the interviews. That wasn't getting me anywhere, so now I'm going to make 50% of the interviews pay-per-view. Very much appreciate if you guys could help me out with that, even though I can monetize again on YouTube with ads and all. I don't know how long that's going to last, and it may be a while before my show makes enough money for me to be able to quit my day job. But hey, every little bit helps, and I love my listeners. I love as much as I love my guests. So please consider subscribing on Patreon to listen to the rest of this interview and the rest of that I will be doing for as long as I do this show, and I do see myself doing this show. Try to do it at least one show a week every day for all eternity. So. With that being said, let's move on to some other subjects here. Now, you mentioned